Hello, Max. Hey, congratulations on another, I want to say, very successful Godzilla movie.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Watched it twice myself. So it's a it's a very fun, action-packed movie. I feel like it's like watching a UFC fight in its own.
It is, and hopefully in a good way. I mean, yeah, that's the ambition. Like, allow you to care about these creatures, and then just be unashamed and unabashed.
Absolutely. Now, for yourself, because when you start writing the script for a story like this, knowing it's going to be Godzilla and King Kong, does that make the process and job easier for you?
Uh, in the sense that they're iconic, you mean, and that we kind of know what they are.
And who's fighting who?
Well, I mean, in this case, the challenge of it obviously was, you know, uh, who else are they fighting, right? And how who's going to win? But that was a problem that had kind of like largely been solved by the time I came in on this film. I came in a little bit once the sort of some of those bones were in place, and it was about how to kind of create the emotional investment and tie it all together. I think with Godzilla and Kong, part of the challenge is always making sure that we have enough understanding of the logic of how we're moving from one place to another and why they're fighting, and so it's not just like a video game melee, right? But at the same time, not overburden it with plot, so that we allow ourselves to know. So like, remember that Godzilla and King Kong are the stars of the movie.
So speaking of, obviously, because the fact that the cat's out of the bag in terms of who other that they would actually fight. How do you guys determine who else is going to be in the film? Which other Titans?
Well, usually, I mean, I think it's partly it's Legendary talking to Toho, and also deciding to create its own creatures, and so it's kind of there's a certain amount of studio kind of brainstorming that goes into it. But ultimately, it's about like what would be badass to see, And in this case, I think it's driven by the fact that Godzilla and Kong are both in our franchise. Neither of them is a heavy. Neither of them is a villain, right? Godzilla is a force of nature that's sort of a balancing agent in the world, and Kong is a sort of like misunderstood anti-hero who just wants to be left alone and yet can't be anymore in this globalized world. And so the you don't want either of them to lose. We have investment in both of them. They're different and they're antagonistic to one another like dog and cats, but neither one is a villain. And so the question is, okay, how do you, given that, how do we have them duke it out sufficiently and yet still find a third thing that's going to, in a satisfying way, stand in as something for them to ally against?
You've introduced previous Titans before, like in Godzilla King of Monsters. Did you have the urge to bring some of those old Titans back into a film like this, or you just basically said, you know what, we're done with those?
Well, so on Godzilla King of the Monsters, like I was involved in writing only the first draft of that, and so some of my sort of story stuff remained, but I had far fewer monsters in my version, and actually Mechagodzilla was the one of the key creatures in that film, and so I was hopeful that that was going to initially be in that film, and once it was decided it wasn't going to be, it went in a different direction. I was really glad when I came back and they had been decided, like, now we're going to do that, because I've always thought that that's a great way of giving agency to the human beings, in the story. And it's like the human beings are operating at the same scale as the creatures. I think, you have to be careful. Like when you introduce too many of the monsters, you start to lose the connection to each one. So I thought this film does a really great job of balancing it, where for a long time it's Godzilla and Kong, and we're really invested in that duel. And then by the time we introduce a third element, we've had enough of Godzilla and Kong, and we're ready for the two of them to unite.
Now, I love the fact that your script writing process, it creates sort of like this new origin story for a lot, whether it's Godzilla or Kong, or whether the third adversary, which is totally different from, the old Godzilla films that a lot of people like to binge watch. Where do you find this creativity? Is it a difficult process to come up with these new origin stories?
I mean, it's like any, of these things you try to kind of, absorb, you have a responsibility. I mean, certainly with Godzilla, where it was, how do we reinvent this iconic character in a way that's going to feel as resonant now as Godzilla was when Godzilla was invented in 1954, and resonated with the idea of, Japan had been bombed, with atomic bombs 9 years before. I mean, it's much more recent than 9/11 is to us now. It's kind of crazy to think about. And it was really, like, you watch that film and there's footage in it that feels, it's not actually, but it feels like it's documentary footage of people with radiation burns. And so it's a pop movie, but it feels raw, and it feels like resonant. And so it was, okay, well, how do we create Godzilla now in a way that feels like he'll speak to some new ideas? And that was a place that I started, and that helped me and Gareth as we were developing the initial sort of version of Godzilla in this franchise. And then, with Kong, it was, it was a sort of related idea, but it was, how do we, the way in on that was, how can we kind of introduce this idea of an island that hadn't been explored in a world where a lot's been explored? And it was, okay, like, what about an Apocalypse Now kind of journey upriver was the sort of initial impetus and idea. And then that sort of that lasted, and there were different versions in different eras, but it was always this sort of Heart of Darkness idea that helped kind of generate that film, and then generated that character of the sort of misunderstood anti-hero, who was sort of in the jungle and kind of steward of the jungle, and these interlopers came in, and the world encroached on him.
Did you, in the old monster movies, there's always references to, aliens from outer space. Did you at any point had the urge to bring that into the MonsterVerse yourself, or did you try to avoid that?
I never did. It's obvious, it's a super tricky thing, because it's like, it's like, I can't believe Marvel pulled it off. Like, it's the hardest stuff to do, because you just keep expanding and keep challenging people to buy in. And what it is it's a different idea. I will say that, like, in my version of Ghidorah, in the version of Godzilla 2 that I had written, there was an extraterrestrial element. There weren't aliens per se, but Ghidorah is an alien. And there was the explanation for it in my version was similar to, the asteroid that had decimated the dinosaurs was actually the arrival of this creature. And, I think in this universe we've developed, we're looking for kind of conspiratorial ideas, like things that are rumors that actually, like Hollow Earth, that tie into, it's actually explained by these creatures, that in fact the world we live in could plausibly have these creatures as a part of it.
I love that concept of Hollow Earth. That was a very, like, journey to the center of the earth type of concept here. When did you actually conceive that concept? At which point during your...
That came up during Kong Skull Island. That was sort of the explanation for why Skull Island was a source of these creatures, that it was sort of tied into the substructure of tunnels and ultimately a hollow earth, that where these giant Titan creatures came from, or have at least gone back to.
Did you, when you basically fine-tune that concept for Hollow Earth, did you set up certain rules for yourself, trying to create this world?
I think, yeah, I mean, to some extent, I think Adam had a vision for what Hollow Earth could feel like in this film when we finally really went there. And what I thought he pulled off beautifully. And, over the course of the script process, there were moments in which the Hollow Earth expedition was something that was more plot driven by people. Ultimately, it got reduced down to like a simple MacGuffin that's the reason they're going. But really, the purpose of it is to take Kong on an emotional journey to his homeland, as it were, like in search of other Kongs. And I thought that just reducing it to its bare essence and to its emotional core like that made for this beautiful sequence that didn't have to be burdened by plot. It was really about, Kong was being manipulated by us to do something and lied to in a sense that he would find others like him. But then he discovers, his origin, and it's moving and emotional and interesting in a way that I thought was like very unique, and Adam pulled it off beautifully.
That is great. Now, since you've done so many movies and so much destruction of cities, San Francisco, Boston, even Florida and Hong Kong, how do you choose your cities? Are these cities you visited and you just want to see them destroyed?
Well, I'm a Lakers fan, so I'm happy that we destroyed Boston in Godzilla 2. But yeah, I'm from LA, so I guess San Francisco was an obvious candidate in the first. But no, I think the answer is like, what would be fun and what would be, what haven't we seen too much of that would feel fresh, but still kind of like, and gives you great set pieces and great imagery.
Now, I know both Kong and Godzilla are both your babies. And, a lot of people will always ask is like, who would you actually prefer to win?
Well, I think there's, Kong fundamentally it's easier to attach to him because he's a primate, and Godzilla is more unknowable and mysterious. I can't pick a favorite because they really are. I'm too connected to both of them. But I think Kong will always be more lovable because Kong feels anthropomorphic and human. But Godzilla is always going to be the badass who you can't understand and, might just stomp you without thinking about it. But maybe if Godzilla helps you, it's a lot more special because Godzilla is like, he doesn't notice people or give a shit, so when he does, you feel that much cooler.
After 4 movies, do you still have more ideas left for this universe for yourself? Would you still want to proceed on?
I mean, I'm sure there are other things that I've certainly, you can't do these things without having other ideas. And I know Legendary has ideas, and I think this has been like the conclusion of a chapter. And I'm curious and excited to see what they think the right thing to happen next could be. But they've been great stewards of these 2 characters, so I think people should be excited about what they're gonna bring to bear.
Excellent. Well, just to wrap up, one more thing, because I noticed that you are now heading back into television with 2 important projects. One is going to be the Lakers, which you're a big fan of, and the other one is sort of a Game of Thrones spinoff. Can you talk about the excitement of doing a long series format of writing these type of stories?
Yeah, well, so the Lakers show is the one I'm doing now, and it's it's a dream project, and I love it, and I've been working on it for quite a while now because obviously the pandemic sort of pressed pause on things, but has allowed us to continue to work and dig into the script. So now we're getting back up and running, and I think it's all television right now, I think, is the best place to be if you're a storyteller, honestly, because the ability to, the resources and the ability to tell, especially on HBO, which is just, the Tiffany network, the ability to really invest and tell stories that have spectacle and scope, but also have the time to really, really invest in character and psychology and just, my favorite things of the last 20 years have been shows like that, and so being able to kind of play in that sandbox is a thrill.
Excellent. Well, Max, hey, thank you very much for speaking with us. You know, I'm glad you've done this movie, because it's a very repeatable, rewatchable movie, which is terrific.
Fantastic. Well, thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Next time. Thank you.
Take care.